This time, Unknown Not the Mind Probe, episode number 89, Kings and Things.
Welcome to NuWho, Not the Mind Probe. Swashbuckling. That was swashbuckling. That was a swashbuckling introduction. I don't know what a swashbuckle is, to be honest.
I don't know.
But whatever it is, I just did it, and I think consensus is nailed it.
Wow, so the consensus is already in?
It's already in.
Do you pay for one of those services where they take in, like, they look through the trades the next day, they look through all the publications and kind of gauge?
Do you not have a focus group in the other room of your place that's got the dials?
Oh, the dials went up. Yeah, the dials went way up. Independents loved it.
Yeah, we invest a lot to make sure that you 5 people who listen to this podcast are happy.
That's right.
And this is a podcast. There it is. A podcast where we watch and rank every single Doctor Who story ever. My name is John Grant, and I have been watching Doctor Who and been a fan, actually, the whole time, too, for 38 amazing years.
And my name's Porter Mason, and John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 26 years. About 3 years ago, we're actually right in the anniversary.
Yeah, we're on the
right
cusp
now.
of the anniversary.
So it's 3 years. Well, I think when this goes out, it'll be because it was around your birthday.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, people, people will be out in the streets celebrating the probe-anniversaries. Yeah.
Well, and that means because I think we have about 2 years left before we get where we face the hard decision.
Yeah,
we're gonna get to the streams will cross over.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have exhausted all Classic Who. Yeah. Not really, because it's
never going to go away.
go into Big Finish and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
but we'll have to decide: does the podcast shift? And I'm preparing people now because 2 years is going to hurtle toward us in no time. And we're going to have to decide, like, how does the podcast continue? Because there will still be new Doctor Who, God willing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
so we need to keep up with that. But
David
then also
Tennant
keep
willing,
occupied, and then occupy ourselves. Otherwise.
David Tennant is still around. There will still be Doctor Who. Here's what happened. I said yes, I'll watch some Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
Huge mistake. I mean, in a way, like I didn't know what I was committing myself.
Yeah, I don't think he really thought through it all. Yeah,
because then what John said is, okay, asshat. Each episode of the podcast, we're going to watch not one Doctor Who story, but 2. And we're going to watch the whole story, not just like an episode. We're going to watch a new Doctor Who story. We're watching through those in order. We're just started the Peter Capaldi years. And then John acts as a sommelier and pairs that NuWho episode with a classic Doctor Who story. John, what are we watching this episode?
Well, I think relevant to this story is that I did not mention when we started this that many of those Doctor Who episodes would not exist anymore. They would actually be listened to.
And that I would have to shell out money because BitTorrent just doesn't work as well as it used to. So
now you own some exciting Doctor Who episodes.
And now, John, my understanding is those historically just always go up in value, right? The digital files I'm getting will accumulate over time. In fact, there's some reports that we have of some people in different states where they've bought 10, 20 different Doctor Who recordings. They have now retired on those recordings. Isn't that right, John?
That's right. The Franklin Mint guarantees.
Franklin Mint. Oh my gosh. I get those kind of, I live with my wife's parents who are, retired. So they're that age that direct mail starts streaming in of all those kind of scams, and they get so many things like that. They're like, you can buy this rare coin that says collectible on it, so it's got to be worth something.
It must be. I don't know when, if at all, coin like that was ever a thing where it's like, a coin that someone just made up and sold directly to me is now collectible.
Right. Well, anything that says
it's for sale,
anything that the marketing says this is collectible means it is worthless. Like, if it's telling you it's collectible, that means the only people savvy enough to get it are ones who saw the advertisement. And anyway, so both stories today have a lot to do with coins, and I think that's
but you know what? I do own a copy of every single Doctor Who story, so I have collected, and I have all the Target books, and that's significant. I'm not into the figures. The figures may be a bridge too far. But
do you buy the NuWho on Blu-ray and DVD?
I do. So I watch as it goes out, obviously, and then I get the Blu-rays when when they come out.
Do you buy it digitally as well?
Well, it
For
depends.
ease?
So, no, gather around, probers. And this is always a fascinating story. So, for a while, I was able to VPN into our London, my company's London server. Sorry, company, and watch the BBC. So for a while, I was able to, and you have to. I will confess here, you do have to say that you are living in the UK and that you pay a license fee to the BBC. Do lie about that.
You've
Apologize.
given some money to the British over
Well,
the
that's
years.
the thing. I've bought Time in the Ronnie 4 times in various formats.
God.
I feel like I've given back, and I'm going to keep buying their stuff. So, but so now.
There was that great episode of course, of No Not the Mind Probe, John Gives Back, where we just see John go throughout Britain. And the way John gives back is he buys those episodes. He also goes throughout the land and starts to spread the good word of Who.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's right.
Goes door to door.
Sandals and a
People assume you're
robe.
Mormon because you're tall and white and pale and wear like nice clothes. But then they almost slam the door, and then you're like, no.
No.
I'm here to talk about Modern Undead. That's what I'm here to talk about.
Do you have a few moments to hear about Modern Undead? It's always an open.
Always. I mean, who says no to that?
All right. Well,
No.
Now, do you have a few moments to hear about Robot of Sherwood, which is our next Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman episode, a comedy romp from, of course, Mark Gatiss coming at you. And then we paired that with, so Robert of Sherwood, obviously the story of Robin Hood, which takes place during the reign of King John. And why is King John on the British throne? Because King Richard the Lionheart is off over and fighting in Israel. So let's check out what he's up to in the Crusades. We got William Hartnell as the first Doctor. We got Barbara, we got Ian, and we got Vicky, and of course King Richard and Joanna. That's the Crusade.
All right, so let's recap these fine episodes.
Mm-hmm.
The Robot of Sherwood is the third episode of season 8 of the NuWho. As we mentioned, we got the 12th Doctor, we got Clara, and we have a whole cast of allegedly real Robin Hood characters.
Yeah.
We'll
Merry
talk
men.
more about that. And that's it. And so we're still kind of beginning the Peter Capaldi era.
Still feeling him out. Yep.
And Clara and the Doctor, I think, are still kind of feeling out how they're going to interact. We are definitely continuing the trend of he's certainly pricklier, right? Than Matt Smith. And he is, I think, one of the ways in which they really do make it so clear that he and Clara, and he is not attracted to Clara, is that this is done in other movies too about alien races. Like, he clearly kind of sees Clara as this weird kind of gross alien thing where he keeps talking about her as like, your face is very wide. And when she shows up and saying like, oh, I'm sorry, he's like, oh, it's okay, you just woke up, you don't have makeup on. She's like, I do have makeup on. I really enjoyed that. But this is a similar episode as to many of the other NuWho stories when kind of more when we get a new companion, but where the Doctor sort of says historical, right? And the history is usually kicked off by the Doctor asking the companion, where do you want to go? Like, where do you want to do? So this is the new Doctor doing that, but did Clara have this with Matt Smith? Did she ever have a where do you want to go?
Let's see. She did. We did the one where they went to the the one where they went to the planet with the singing girl, the Rings of Akatan. And then it was a historic one.
That was kind of like that one.
Yeah,
that was kind of it.
Forgetting what happened after
where
that.
She just said, I want to see something amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then,
So basically this is the Doctor returning to that moment saying like, no, but be specific.
Yeah, let's do this, right.
Okay, this is story number 244. It aired in September 6th, 2014, and John has prepared a little clip.
That's what I do.
Splendid. In chains.
Yep.
Trussed up like turkey cocks. That's thanks to your friend.
Shut it, Hoodie. I saved your life.
I had the situation well in hand.
Long-haired ninny versus robot killer knights. Where would I put my money?
If you had not betrayed me, I would have been triumphant.
You would have been a little puff of smoke and ashes.
Ha!
You'd have been floating around in tiny little laughing bits in people's goblets.
Balderdash. Ha!
Oh, right, here we go. It's laughing time.
Well, you amuse me, grey old man.
God! He's laughing again. You can't keep me locked up with a laughing person.
I find that quite funny. Do you know, I feel another laugh coming on. Ah, ha, ha, ha!
God, I cannot remain in this cell! Execute me
No,
now.
I didn't execute the old fool.
No, hang on. Execute him.
I do not fear death, so execute away!
Execute him. I'd like to see if his head keeps laughing when you chop it off.
Oh, Robin Hood always laughs in the face of death.
Yes, rolling around the floor laughing. I would pay good money to see that. God!
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 That was a great scene.
Banter.
Wonderful scene. And I think what's helpful as we get to know this doctor more is you just, I don't know, it's always interesting with each doctor to see like what things are sort of the same and what things are different. And this sort of egotism about him still continues. Like there is this undercurrent of totally different guy, and again, much more prickly and stuff like that. But this has come up before with some of the other actors. We get this little like, ego thing. It was like, you're not so great, you know. He's always has this over anyone that the companions see, clearly look up to, or
Right,
hold
as a
in high
hero,
esteem.
yeah.
He's very quick to be like, wait, but not higher than me, right? And this guy's nothing. Like, you know,
Yeah.
I'm way more important. So I definitely had some holes in understanding about this. So I'll tell you what I
There's
watched,
reason for that,
and then
but yeah.
you can kind of explain if I missed something.
Well, you know what might be confusing is this is written by Mark Gatiss, and at this point, he was
Yes.
actually heterosexual with 3 kids. He went through a weird phase in the just
Yeah.
kidding, folks. Mark Gatiss still very gay
Okay.
when he did this, and that may have confused you because as a heterosexual man, perhaps you don't understand
Right.
all that he is doing.
Right. So I'm going to tell you what I saw, and then you can tell me what the secret gay
Yeah, we're all the
language revealed here. Yeah. So, okay. The 12th. So he asked Clara, where do you want to go? And she says, I want to see Robin Hood. And he's,
Mhm.
I don't know if he says this beforehand, but he basically says like, well, that's not real, but sure, we can go to that era, you know. And they arrive there, and he's surprised to see, and Clara's overjoyed to say like, oh, there's Robin of Locksley. He shoots arrows really well, has a band of, as the doctor repeatedly says, laughing too much, merry men.
Merry man
They're all there. Friar Tuck, everyone you know from the Robin Hood stories is there.
from the Disney movie. Yeah.
From the Disney movie.
He's not a bear, but no, sorry, wasn't
Yeah,
Little
the-
John a
well,
giant bear? No,
Robin
that
Hood's a
was
fox,
disappointing.
Little John's a bear, Friar Tuck is a badger.
That was I thought that was inaccurate. I feel like they should have gone with the traditional Robin Hood story where they're all pudgy animals. But yeah, whatever.
Yes, and by the way, if we do want to do a podcast about Disney's Robin Hood, that was my favorite Disney movie growing up, so I'm happy to talk about that ad nauseum, including the adorable little baby bunny who carries around a stuffed animal and says the cutest things.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, that's the era of Disney where a lot of the animations are all just reused animations from it was my favorite Disney movie, so I love it.
Mhm.
But the animation is all from like the Jungle Book and other like good Disney movies. They just reuse the animation but change the characters from like,
Oh, really? Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
yeah, like so there's things of like Mowgli, and it's just they put a fox head on him and then he's like Robin Hood. So it's pretty funny.
I mean, smart.
It's smart. And
Kids
they
are
have
dumb. Yeah.
this is that is the Disney movie that has a lot more of a Hanna-Barbera feel to it, where you know in Hanna-Barbera shows and movies where all of a sudden they'd be like, we're on a chase, and then things are just running around.
Yeah.
The reason by that is it's like you just have to do a run cycle animation. It's like 10 frames, and then you just go over and over and over again. You don't have to animate anything new. So there's lots of parts of Robin Hood where people are just chasing each other across the screen for minutes on end. But I love the songs in Robin Hood. But listen, this wasn't this disappointingly. This was not that Robin Hood.
None of that happened here.
So they land there. They're actually they do seem to be Robin Hood, and the doctor is just immediately credulous and saying like, well, something's up here. This is not real. Which there's a bunch of funny moments at the beginning where he's sort of going around being like, aha, trying to like pull the curtain back and show that these are really holograms or these are really you know, whatever it is, and can't seem to.
He samples the guy's blood and he's like, he would really be dead in 6 months. All the diseases in him.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
He pulls the guy's shoe off. I think Friar Tuck's shoe. So they're not. And Clara is quite taken by Robin Hood. Who wouldn't be? He's very charming.
Man, he's got Carrie Elwes from Princess Bride look going to him,
Yes,
I felt
yes.
like. Yeah, very.
Very early on, though, we hear like, oh, he's still attached to the dead girl. You know, Maid Marian was there. Or he thinks he's dead.
She's dead or missing or something. Yeah.
So, but it's the same deal. The Sheriff of Nottingham is here and going around and gathering riches from people, but notably only gold. We find out that, and that is something that sort of perks the doctor's ears up. Well, anyway, they do get caught. We have the scene that we just had where they're both sort of arguing about who can be the hero, and ultimately we find out that and he does and just like the Robin Hood tale, he shows up by there's a archery contest, which is how the sheriff is trying to suss out Robin Hood in the story, and
Tom
the
Tinker
doctor shows up and ruins it with a rainbow colored arrow. Very
Oh,
fun Doctor Who arrow. I don't know if you saw it.
I didn't even notice the arrow was rainbow.
Yeah, the arrow's feathers were the colors of like the Doctor Who scarf, essentially. Like that's yeah. So
Easter eggs.
So right. So anyway, they get put in jail, and we find out, and this is where I'm fuzzy on. So ultimately, he sees like one of the knights is a robot.
Yep.
And to me, I thought, oh, this is Cyberman. I thought this was like a new design of a Cyberman or something like that.
No.
But it is a robot. And then ultimately we find out that the sheriff, and Clara gets some of this out of the sheriff too. The sheriff came upon a spaceship that I guess just crashed there that had these robots on it.
Mm-hmm.
And their gold is what will help power the spaceships. By the way, really funny scene is when they do the thing. They're self-aware about it. Reddit is funny. They're saying like, oh, I'm going to go get captured. That's how you get them to tell you your plans. You get captured and then they tell you everything, like a Bond villain type thing. And so he's doing that with Clara. He's telling her everything. And I love that he says, he's like, first Nottingham and then Leicester or whatever. He says some other small British like county or town right next to them. And I thought that was a really, really funny scene that like the limits of his ambition extend to his known world, which is just, right here in this part of England. So anyway, we find out that they need the gold to power the spaceship. That's why they're only collecting gold. And basically they come in and show up. And this is the part I didn't get.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor finally figures out that Robin Hood and the Merry Men are there. I thought he figured this out, but I didn't understand this. Are there as a means of giving he's just using the populace to get gold and find or the robots are. I don't know who's doing this exactly, but this story is like these characters are there to give them myth and hope because that's how you keep like a populace,
right?
But does that mean, so are they real? I'm confused by it. Like, are they robots? Like, what are they?
No, well, I mean, I think part of what they're trying to play with this is the idea of myths and legends and are they real or not? And it is a bit muddled. And I'm not sure. I mean, I think they're supposed to be real people, or they're supposed to be flesh and blood people. But so part of the problem is when this story was about to be broadcast, the ending was going to be the sheriff of Nottingham getting beheaded by Robin Hood, and the sheriff was going to turn out to be a robot.
Okay.
But shortly before that, ISIS beheaded a couple people. It was around that time. And so obviously ISIS trying to disrupt Doctor Who's broadcast.
Yeah, that was their main
typical. Yeah,
to establish a caliphate and then disrupt new Doctor Who episodes. Yeah.
So they decided it would have been insensitive, probably to show that. So they re-edited it, and you've got the sheriff sort of falling down into the thing or whatever. But so then you don't turn out that the sheriff's a robot, which then I think muddles a little bit about all right, then who's in charge of this whole situation? I think they tried to make it be like he's being manipulated, or maybe the sheriff was created. It's confusing.
Well, I sort of bought the sheriff being manipulated.
Yeah,
but I just never understood. So, are the Robin Hood characters real or not?
I think so. I think they are.
So, is this meant to be like this is the origin of this story?
Well, okay, wait.
But what was the doctor saying in which he was saying like, yeah, you're basically allowed to exist and have some success in order to mollify it, like to keep, this is how you keep the popular, you keep them entertained. I thought he was saying that is like, this is the truth, or was that just more like his theory or
maybe a theory? Because I think sort of like at the end, right, the Doctor and Robin Hood have the conversation about myths, who's a myth.
They have the conversation. I mean, look, the Doctor and Robin Hood sit down and you talk with them.
You're a myth. I mean, when you told one of your daughters is mythical, right? And you had to sit her down and explain, and that's a hard moment for any family.
Yeah.
A lot of families avoid it, and I'm glad you didn't.
Like they sit down, it's like, Mommy and Daddy read a lot of fantasy and science fiction books, and
you're not real.
Look, we birthed you and conceived you in the same way we conceived the real daughter. And believe me, it took a lot of long nights. Yeah, well, I thought it was interesting, and it's funny because it and I feel like this has happened a couple times, specifically with this showrunner with Stephen Moffat, that there's some things in there. It's like, it's not really tied up. Like, who can say? It's like, oh well, you, I guess, but but like that just left a little confusing to me. I mean, it's fine. Like, you just move on to the next story. But I was just like, and then so the robots. Well, anyway, so they
Fly
defeat the
away.
sheriff of Nottingham, and what they want, I guess, the robots to escape so it'll explode. So it's this a nice little piece of the story is like, hey, they need one more bit of gold. Let's shoot the golden arrow that you won at the contest to give them that last bit of gold to get out of the atmosphere and then explode. But how, like, again, it doesn't matter, but whose spaceship was it? And did they die? Or is it just the robots themselves had a spaceship? And that's what was confusing.
Yeah, the robots had a spaceship, and it was going to. Oh, okay, all right, sorry. So maybe, well, yeah, I don't know who creates who. Yes, so they go on the spaceship, and the robots have some knowledge of Robin Hood because they look at pictures of the Robin Hood myth, like the computer on the spaceship. Remember, there's a scene where they go through and they're looking at different depictions of Robin Hood, which includes, by the way, a classic Doctor Who joke because before Doctor Who, Patrick Troughton played Robin Hood in a TV show. So one of the pictures is Patrick Troughton as Robin Hood. But anyway, yeah. So maybe it's something like, they maybe the idea is like, hey, if the sheriff was a robot, and so maybe now it's like, okay, well, we'll just build him up as a bad guy. Then this will automatically spawn the legend of Robin Hood. Like maybe they create the sheriff and then someone will automatically sort of step up into that as like the opposition to that. I don't know. Robots are also going to the Promised Land, which is a big, right? Their destination is, quote, the Promised Land, which is the bit of the running theme, although I want to come back to this later in the season because I'm not sure it all hangs together. But right, so remember that the Clockwork robots in Deep Breath were also trying to get to the Promised Land, right? They're talking about the destination being the Promised Land.
All right.
So there's a Promised Land arc going through here as well. But yeah, it's a bit of a muddle.
Well, why don't we move on to our classic episode? Oh my gosh, no!
I haven't had my chance to. Just a couple quick things. This is the Doctor's character is a bit all over the place here. He's a bit particular. It's like maybe it's a deliberate character beat. Maybe it's a bit of a misstep. Is sort of remember he like, tells Clara, "Hey, I'm not your boyfriend." But then seems to spend this entire episode trying to like upset that she's impressed by Robin Hood, and like trying to sort of compete. I mean, not.
Again, to me, I felt like it was okay, and I didn't get a romantic sense there. It was more of he just feels more avuncular and like a dad.
I'm your hero, not this guy. Yeah.
So but it just feels more like, oh, I'm better than this. I don't know. But,
yeah, and then
you're right.
We've got some great dialogue in here, the banter, the stuff that we a lot of back and forth. Mark Gatiss having fun with the wittiness. The sheriff is played by Ben Miller, who I was actually just watching before we did this podcast. He is famous for Death in Paradise. He plays a detective in the early seasons of Death in Paradise, and is a pretty well known British actor. And the only thing is, only other note is Clara. There's some people who said they didn't like the depiction of Clara here because they're like, oh, she's got a schoolgirl crush on Robin Hood or whatever. It didn't really bother me because it's like, well, yeah, she probably fell in love with Robin Hood as a schoolgirl, and she's got a schoolgirl crush. Like it is a schoolgirl crush. Like I mean, what are you expecting?
I actually like that because you've rarely seen that from her. For example. We saw her get offered to become Empress of the Universe, and she's like, "No, no thanks."
Pass.
And so I like to see, well, for Clara Oswald, who is the person in her? Because we all have that. You're right. Usually traced back to someone we did genuinely have a crush on when we were really young, and so I thought it was fun to see her in this fawning way because it wasn't. It stood out to me as different than she usually acts.
When I went to the Doctor Who 50th anniversary convention and I met Janet Fielding, who played Tegan, I was like, I don't really know what to say. I was like, I've met the vice president, but I don't know what to say to this woman who's been in one TV show. So yeah, I think people have that. But yes, a light and fluffy, witty little app. Okay, now you can go.
So why don't we move on to the classic episode? This is the Crusade, and as we discussed, this has some missing pieces to it.
Yeah,
I believe the second and third are missing.
Yeah, no, second and fourth.
Second and fourth. Yeah, it's from season. But
you said nope. I'm not watching any of it.
I'm not. Well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So it's season 2. It's story number 6. It comes right after the Web Planet, which we watched a few weeks back.
Real barn burner.
This is
and interesting how similar they both are. Like, I mean,
very similar. She
He's in a pod.
mentions that when she goes through the litany of where she's been, she's like, well, there were a bunch of insects, and then we went here.
Insect planet. And, okay.
First Doctor, William Hartnell, checking in. We have, and this is still not the original, but it's Ian and Barbara, and Vicky.
And then Vicky now,
So great. This is only the 14th story ever. It's 4 parts. And then for those of you watching along with us, if you're going to go watch now, here's the thing you got to know. It's the videos may be available. It was not easy for me to get to the videos. They're not in BritBox, and the individual 1 and 3, I guess, that were available were not easy for me to get through legal or fuzzy means, one or the both of them. But you can get a couple different things audio wise. There's a novelization of this story, which is available as an audiobook. But then there's also the audio narration of this. So it's the audio. They do have the full audio from all 4 stories. And then they add in narration. I believe the writer or one of the actors actually does.
I think it might be Ian. It might be Ian.
And essentially what they do is, it may be more than this, or it may literally just be this, but they're reading, what it sounds like is they're reading the stage directions.
It's actually really interesting. They have to get a writer to come in. So they basically try to get as many pictures from the production as they can. And often those telesnaps, which we've seen sort of reconstructions using those. They get the original scripts, they get camera scripts, they get behind the scenes stuff, and then they try to piece together, okay, what did this look like? And then the challenging part is they have to fit those descriptions in the silences. Like, if there's dialogue, you can't obviously be talking over the dialogue. So whatever it is, they have to go through and like write out they take the whole like audio and say, all right, there's a 5-second gap here. Okay, we can describe like Ian looks up. Or something here like Ian looks down the long dark corridor with trepidation. Like, I mean, so they have to sort of write in as best they can to sort of fill in those gaps. It must be a pretty interesting project.
It almost seemed to me like they extended them sometimes.
They might,
because the timings of the different episodes weren't quite 25 minutes, although maybe there's just variability in the BBC in that sense. Is that different from American TV? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they can be a little bit more flexible, but yeah, they might. I mean, I'm going to be honest, occasionally when doing the clips, I might just clip out a few seconds that are silent because we got to move on. This show is directed within an inch of its life. I don't have time for silence.
All right, why don't we play a clip of the Crusade, which John...
I will speak with my brother.
Oh?
What's this I hear? I can't believe it's true. Marriage to that heathenish man, that infidel.
We will give you reasons for it.
This unconsulted partner has no wish to marry. I am no sack of flour to be given in exchange.
It is expedient. The decision has been made.
Not by me, and never would be.
Joanna, please consider. The war is full of weary, wounded men. This marriage wants a little thought by you, that's all. Then you'll see the right of it.
And how would you have me go to Suffolk? Bathed in oriental perfume, I suppose. Suppliant, tender and affectionate. Soft-eyed and trembling. Eager with 1,000 words of compliment and love. Well, I like a different way to meet the man I am to wed.
Well, if it's a meeting you want...
I do not want. I will not have it.
Joanna! Get out! Get out! Joanna, I beg you to accept.
No!
I entreat you, Joanna.
No!
Very well. I am the king. We command you.
You cannot command this of me. No. There is a higher authority than yours to which I answer.
I am the king. Where is there any man who has greater power over his subjects?
In Rome. His Holiness the Pope will not allow this marriage of mine to that infidel!
Yeah, intense. Now, you've had a similar exchange with your sister, I believe, at one point.
Yes.
So you can really relate to this storyline, I feel like.
Now, that's a great example of an actor, the princess, really going for it, but not in a scenery-chewing way. It was just genuinely really
great scene.
Great.
It's a really good scene. And she's a very well-known actress in the...
Oh, is she? Well, good for her.
Some of us know. Some of us.
Fully for her. Mm-hmm. All right. I'll explain some of this. In a way, the plot isn't that important, and I don't know. Like, it to me, this just felt like a really good stage play of this type of a story. And whereas the plot, it's like it's not as important as it's more about getting scenes like this. It's like setting up some scenes between these characters.
Yeah.
we have the first Doctor, Ian, Barbara, and Vicky. And yeah, they just get dropped down right in the middle of the Crusades, right in the middle of a Saracen ambush. Barbara's seized, which is that as is
Instantly,
Barbara is
right?
once.
I love that Barbara is instantly kidnapped.
Instantly.
Like barely even gets a line out before someone drags her away.
She spends most of the story with
Saladin.
yeah. So she's off there, and then we have the Doctor and Ian and Vicky.
So it's after that.
Trying to get Barbara back, but they're kind of in the middle of this conflict too. And then we just get a lot of like, not palace intrigue is the wrong word, but it's like a political plot of like
in court. They're in court. Yeah.
How are they going to resolve the Crusades essentially? Like, and what I liked is there was the thing at the end where they make this entreaty to offer up the princess as a way to sort of, well, let's mend this with marriage. And I liked his reaction to it, the Saladin's, I think it was the Saladin's reaction to it, of saying like, let's hear this out, but I'm also going to be ready to attack if this does fall through rather, because I think if he's making an entreaty like this sounds like someone who's tired and wants to end this war. So maybe we follow through on it, but also maybe this is the perfect time to strike. So I thought that was interesting. There was just a lot of scenes like that. And we just heard I just mentioned it was the Lady Joanna who was being offered there. And
King Richard's sister.
As you heard, Richard's sister, she's just not that then into him.
Well, I mean, but supposedly, historically, she may have been. Like, there was actually supposedly just some hint of incest between the two of them. I don't know. Never been
between Richard and
Joanna.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. That did not come across.
Hard to work into a children's.
Ian has a couple fights,
like he does. Mm-hmm.
And what else?
Barbara, evil El Lekir, who's quite
Barbara escapes twice.
Yeah,
but they keep pulling her back in. And what do we eventually get out? The Doctor is a non-factor in this story. In a lot of ways.
Everybody else is in like a really serious drama, and he's just kind of giggling through it and being like, "Oh no, I'm stuck in court intrigue." Oh, and it's a very weird contrast to, like, he gets a long scene where he steals clothes from sort of a ridiculous vendor at the beginning or whatever, and it's like played for comedy, and then like everybody else is like having scenes like that, and he's like swindling a guy out of his used clothes. It was a weird,
right? So I don't know how much to talk about like that. I don't know. That's the plot. But there's a bunch of these scenes, and then there's some really good performances. It strikes me, compared to the Robin Hood one we just saw, and I don't know, this just sort of happened to me, so I'm sure you're very like tuned in on this, but it's like these original historical ones, there was no tie into anything else. It's just, we're here at this point in history. It's just been a while since we saw them. We started right off with one of these, the Romans or something.
The Aztecs, I think, very early on.
The Aztecs, and then the Romans, and wasn't there a Pompeii one? Well, that was a newer one. Anyway, in all the new ones, when they go historical, it's historical and then pulled into something doctory or an alien or whatever. And these, it's like, no, we're just gonna hang out here for a while and then move on.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. It was quite a contrast. But yeah, I thought it was good. I love Ian and Barbara. Vicky, I have no sense of. It was interesting listening to it by audio only, and I thought, actually, and I could see this, and I'm sure you've done this many times, listening to this with the stage directions, very well thought out, as you just described their process, was actually a really nice way to listen to it, because you're maybe getting some things that wouldn't come across when you were just watching, because it's like someone who knows the show really well sitting down and be like, Ian looked over there because he's really concerned about this. And you're getting the subtext, not in a bad way, in a more of a, I'm getting very clearly what they're trying to convey, rather than, I don't know, it's an old black and white show and I might be missing some things. And then the production value is as good as they could do it, but not that great. So the just hearing it like this is actually a really nice way to hear. It makes me excited to at some point listen to some Big Finish things because I'm like, oh, this is actually a nice way to listen to these stories.
Yeah. I mean, the production values in your head are always much better.
Yeah,
It would be
right.
terrible if the production values in your head were bad.
I just can't.
Sets are awful.
Everyone's on strike in my head right now, and so it's very difficult.
Total mess. Yeah, this is by David Whitaker, who's one of the early script editors of Doctor Who, and sort of in the early formative years, and obviously is a very good writer, as you can tell by some of the dialogue here. Julian Glover plays King Richard, most famous for playing the bad guy in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, although more famous in Doctor Who circles for being Scaroth in City of Death. Remember the Paris one? He was the bad guy there.
Yeah.
Joanna is Jean Marsh, who only another year from this episode comes to Doctor Who as a companion briefly. She plays Sarah Kingdom in the Daleks' Master Plan, which we will be getting to. And she is very famous for having created and starred in Upstairs, Downstairs.
Wow.
Yeah, so she's a big shot. This was a missing story, or as you can, some of it is missing. So for a long time, we just had episode 3. Then at one point about 20, 25 years ago now, they found episode 1, The Lion, somewhere. So that was a very exciting return of a lost episode. You don't get this on the audio, so you're missing this part, which is there is a little bit of Arab face, I guess you would call it here. There are some white actors.
That's a good point, because I didn't see that at all. So you just have it as a story, and I don't like. And I thought they're not the way they're portraying, the Saladin and all that.
Saladin and Safadine,
pretty good. They're not doing they're very smart and capable, and it's just these two sides of this battle. It's not like they're presented as some mongrels or something,
Yeah, they're very, very sympathetic characters, and playing them very smart. I do. Yes, you do love Barbara in this. She's once again very resourceful. I love her. He's like,
and
well,
she's the history teacher, right? That was the idea.
So she knew what was going on, right? So she immediately knew, because remember she has to briefly pose as Joanna, and she's like, Sir William doesn't. She's like, we don't have red hair. He's like, I know. I'm joking. I'm not joking. I'm covering the king.
I'm having a little fun.
It's okay. Come on, lady. And then you do get. I love the moment where she realizes she's like, he's like, well, you have to tell your stories to entertain us, and then she's like, what am I gonna tell? And then she's like, oh, I could do Shakespeare. Like, they've never heard of any of this stuff. I could just tell all these stories.
Right.
That's great. Hartnell's good in here, but he's clearly having a good time, and is being very wacky in his scenes. But no, this is a solid one. But yes, you're right. Yes, this is the sort of template for classic historical stories. They can't really change anything. They're supposed to be slightly educational, and they get caught up in history, and the goal is we got to get the heck out of history somehow, and that's sort of their primary motivation. They had to be separated from the TARDIS, separated from each other. Ian has to go get Barbara, of course. And as I said, I love the fact that just instantly upon landing, she is just grabbed and dragged off, and it's like, yep, there she goes again.
Well, Robin Hood, a little theme walking through the forest, laughing back and forth to what the other has to say, reminiscing this and that and having such a good time. Oodle-lally, golly, what a theme.
From Robin Hood the movie.
With Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman sang that song.
We are adherents of the repeating themes here on No Nothing Mind Probe. We like to look at thoughts and ideas that thread themselves through space and time in Doctor Who and in culture itself, which basically put those hands together. Doctor Who and all culture,
everything.
It's
two
one and the same.
Those are basically the two sides of the same coin.
It's a Venn diagram is a circle thing. What did you want to cover with the themes tonight?
Let's talk about dialogue. Let's have a dialogue.
Have a dialogue
about dialogue. Because I would say that these are two stories that have a very distinctive pattern to them, a very distinctive style, right? You've got sort of the Robot of Sherwood. You've got this quick-witted banter, sort of sarcasm and humor and whatnot going on, not entirely through it. Then you've got the Crusade, which is almost a Shakespearean sort of level, right? I mean, the way they talk in the Crusade is very sort of, again, Shakespeare, right? It sounds like a Shakespearean drama. There's a cadence and a rhythm and a level to it. It's just kind of like, what do we want of our Doctor Who dialogue? I mean, is it obviously the interesting thing about Doctor Who is it doesn't have a distinctive voice that sort of goes through all of it. compare it to The West Wing, right? It would be weird. The West Wing is Aaron Sorkin's dialogue, pretty much, and then Sorkin-like even when he leaves. That quick sort of back and forth banter, and very fast and erudite and all that kind of stuff. It would have been weird if like one episode was like that, and then another one was like, "We're in the White House," like, had like a very different tone to it. Doctor Who, of course, the dialogue is all over the place, but I don't. What is there? Is there a preferred one? Because the classic, I would say, style of dialogue for what you would expect of Doctor Who, probably if someone said, "Hey, this is a sci-fi TV show about a guy who travels around a phone booth and fights monsters," then you would, if you'd never seen that before, you'd be like, "Okay, the dialogue is probably something like, 'Stop there, Dalek! I'll stop you!'" And like that would be the sort of
and I would say, and then mixed in with like some kind of Han Solo like quips and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So yeah, Doctor Who dialogue needs humor, right? Although I guess the Crusade is not particularly witty. I don't recall any. I mean, a lot. Well, like it's not. You didn't get this in the audio clip, but Joanna was wearing those Groucho Marx glasses with the mustache during that entire scene, which was their way of saying, "Hey, there's a little wit in here." No,
right.
Wait, I'm just kidding, everybody. That didn't actually happen.
Well, I think the show itself can really vary. The Doctor has a couple of modes of dialogue that I think have stayed pretty consistent, at least through the NuWho, and to some extent in different ways old Who, or at least there's a variation on the same theme, which is, as we talked about, the things that always stay consistent with him are he's fundamentally pretty good.
Yeah.
And he's very smart, and he considers himself, I think, funny. I know that's more or less than with some of the Doctors, and so that results in a dialogue that I feel like there's two modes. There is the like light Doctor mode of he's in a rapid fire thing. His mind is moving very quickly.
Yeah, speed. I was gonna say that's the one, the distinction.
His mind is moving very quickly, and if depending upon who's he's talking with, it's kind of like a tennis match where he and the companion are having a His Girl Friday, kind of a back and forth tete-a-tete, and there's just like witty exchanges, or it's with kind of a slower member of the, could be an ally or an enemy, but that he's sort of rapid fire pummeling with things with quips to confuse them, sometimes as a means of like doing something with an enemy, and sometimes again he's so smart that sometimes he is just confusing people or playing jokes on them just to kind of amuse himself as he's going along, because he's one of those people who just feels like, I'm so smart, so unless I do something like this, I'm going to be so bored by this whole interaction. So I feel like that happens with all the Doctors. And then you have dramatic Doctor of like we're talking about the Time War or something like that, and we kind of, the lighting changes, and the camera shifts into an angle, and it's like, I have seen things that you will, the horror. So those always persist. Now, within individual episodes, I feel what's interesting is that the rest of the dialogue and the companion, again, they could be the His Girl Friday, or
Clara.
I don't know. There's different things, but then the companion often is changed more by the episode that they're in. Yeah. So, and the episode of the individual episode has different modes of dialogue, just because it's like, well, obviously, like, hey, we're in King
Crusade,
Richard's England.
Yeah,
we're in
speak like that. Yeah.
We're in the future, so, or like, oh, it's more of a military episode, so we're around a bunch of people kind of talking in short clipped sentences with lots of acronyms and stuff like that. So I think that's what's interesting, is that the dialogue does really shift based on the tone of the individual episode, which at least nominally is sort of trying it is this anthology kind of a series. Like, they're kind of shifting the genre a little bit each time, but then you have the Doctor, and when the Doctor's talking to the companion, that kind of,
that's true,
is this thread throughout. So it's kind of interesting, but that's why it must be so much fun to write for, because it's this opportunity to really do different sorts of things throughout. And generally it's humorous, but there are some heavy episodes.
Yeah.
Blink being one of the more famous ones, but it's like, that was pretty heavy. And then even some of there's unsuccessful ones that are coming to mind now, but there's some that have that like really, really heavy, like someone's in danger, someone's really hurt, that like it's really more of a dramatic tone. So that shifts it too.
I mean, I guess it would be jarring, I guess. So the comparison would be, because you could say, and I don't know if I've got a more recent comparison, but I think it was the movie with Heath Ledger. Was it A Knight's Tale?
Yes.
Where they spoke in modern. They
Yep.
just used modern English, right?
And the
And I
soundtrack is all
remember,
modern songs. And
yeah, and I remember people reacting to that and being like, "Well, that's weird." Like, so clearly, we have an expectation that, especially things set in certain times, are going to have a certain cadence or certain style to the dialogue, right? That
Right.
it would be weird if Richard was like, "Dude, Joanna, dude, just chill, babe," right?
Right, of course, yeah.
So that would be odd. And so there is this expectation, I guess. And then you get the I always think it's very interesting is that I love really classic sci-fi villain dialogue when you get into is no contractions, right? Like sort of this very stylized, like
I will not.
I would not do this.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly. Right. I wouldn't do it. No, yeah, like it's a
I ain't
very.
doing that, doctor.
So there is sort of, I mean, I guess there is a bit of a shorthand. It would be, I guess what I'm trying to do, and I'm sure he's a big prober, is I want Aaron Sorkin to write Doctor Who episode.
I think that could fit though.
And Tommy Schlamme to direct, and we'll just have a nice little West.
Because you
the
mentioned
West
Aaron
Who.
Sorkin, and I think the Doctor and his companion, like you could have Aaron Sorkin come in and just write some of their interactions, and you wouldn't actually notice.
Yeah.
You'd be like, "Oh, that was good," but it wouldn't feel out of place. Now, if he wrote a whole episode, it would have to be a particular, I think, type of episode.
Yeah.
That's
true. Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I think is interesting is you do get certainly one consistent thing of the Christopher Eccleston forward, and probably a little bit of Paul McGann even is speed, right? The lines are delivered, but the Doctor talks much faster, which is fine for me as a person who talks very fast. But it's interesting. I wonder too, is that also just a development? Like certainly we know visual style, right? How TV shows are directed, and we've talked about this in the past, right? That it used to be if someone drove somewhere that you'd see them drive the car to the driveway, and then they get out of the car and they close the door, and then they'd walk up to the door and they'd open the door, and you had to see all that. And now they just cut from like the place to the person coming in the door or whatever. But I was wondering, I'm sure dialogue has changed in the same. I'm sure early, and probably some of Doctor Who's earliest dialogue was probably influenced by radio dialogue, which I'm sure was a very different style, right? I mean, and had to be a lot more verbose. You probably acted with you acted with your voice. If you're very good with facial expressions on the radio, it probably wasn't doing much for anybody. So then probably, yes, they probably said a lot more, and then it had to develop over time. But then I wonder if that was also, I would think radio dialogue would have to be a bit slower because maybe it's harder to pay attention. And then also maybe a bit repetitive. I don't know. I see when I listen to, I'm curious, you listen to these stories,
right?
Was it easier to pay attention, or did you have trouble following them? Like audio, I have to focus on. If I'm trying to do something else, I can often drift away.
Yeah, can be difficult. Spoiler alert, I also listened to next episode's classic with in the same way through an audio with the narration, and I found it harder to pay attention to that one. So there was a difference there where the quality of this episode, I paid attention more. You're right, it is a challenge because I wasn't sitting in a dark room with a cup of tea staring into the distance, listening to it
in a lotus position with just let the Doctor Who wash over you.
Yes, it's just a challenge just because your other senses are still engaged when that's happening. But I've definitely had episodes where the video's on and I start wandering and doing other things while we're doing that. Basically, all Who episodes, all Who stories should be watched on the big screen in a theater where your attention is commanded and there's no other distractions.
You absorb it all, or
case.
Watch it 25 times.
That's right. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is sort of dialogue and sort of stylistic, and I don't know that there's lots of shows that are necessarily like this, but given the nature of the show and that it is across time,
good, you got it.
It took 89 episodes. The dialogue is not grounded in this. The show literally takes place over 60 years, but the dialogue does not. It does not date. It does not. There's no references to current day.
That's true.
There's been
rarely,
sparingly, right? They mentioned the Beatles in that one episode, and I think there was a couple of, and maybe in NuWho, if there are references to modern day things, they're more like Easter eggs or background things. They're not real strong.
It's rare.
And as a result, like you can watch these old episodes because they're not talking in such a way that you're like, I can't figure out what's going on, because yes, that person was from the 1970s in some cases, not always. Like Jamie was from the Scottish Highlands, whatever, from hundreds of years ago. But like the companion isn't talking in some jargon that feels old. It's like, nah, they're from all over the place. They're often not from the time that they're in. So I think that is interesting. And again, there probably stuff that would get edited out of the dialogue where they'd say like, no, this is a metaphor, not a metaphor. This is an idiom that the Doctor wouldn't know, like, or the Doctor might know it, but why would this be part of his speech?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you have to be with idiomatic language like English. You have to be very careful that you have an alien, and it's going to be like, if they make a reference, it's like the Doctor should use idioms like what's the famous Star Trek episode where he's trapped on the planet with the guy to try to learn how he's like Shaka when the walls fell and like all that. Like there's a Star Trek where he only speaks in allusions to things, but they've never heard of what these allusions are. Like, yes, the Doctor should be like, that thing is as fast as a Spiel Snape, and like, what?
All right.
Do you think Aaron Sorkin's he's going to listen to that and be like, all right?
Do you think he would ever do
right? I don't know. I don't know. Well, he directs now. He does movies and
play back to his plays.
Also, the Doctor, as far as we know, doesn't have a father that he can have some sort of problem with.
That's true.
Like all Aaron Sorkin characters.
That's true.
Yeah. You call that Doctor Sorkin.
Does the Doctor go through any substance abuse issues? Because that's also a common.
And therapy. He has a therapist.
Therapy, yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, look, John, there are 300 Doctor Who television stories. We have ranked 176 of them. We're going to add a couple more.
Boom.
I will start.
Please do.
I'm still feeling like shaky about the Peter Capaldi era. I'll be honest. Like, it's fine, but like, and I like him. Honestly, I have to say, I'm not crazy about Clara. Like, I feel like this. It's just I don't get what her deal is. Like, so I'm interested to see how that continues to be fleshed out over the coming episodes. But that's all to say. I ranked. I was about to tell you where I ranked An Unearthly Child, which is not really relevant to what we're talking.
Since you ranked that at the very beginning, I know. I mean, I'm glad to know you've done it.
It's like technical difficulty. Okay. Sorry, I short-circuited to episode 1 instead of 89. Robot of Sherwood, I ranked 65. Okay, so that's where I ranked it.
Okay, everybody.
About a third.
Very happy.
About a third of the way down, and I ranked it
61?
65.
65. Okay.
I ranked it right around turn left. I feel like it's a pretty good NuWho episode. Not great. And I guess that's what I'm saying is my worry is we've now 3 in, and like that's kind of my feeling about all these. I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's pretty good. Like, but none of them are like, oh God, this is, not, and I don't mean the episode, because what we had is we had several Matt Smith episodes, and I think some David Tennant ones too, where the episode wasn't even that great, but we're like, gosh, they're so good. Like, I'm just ranking this high just because these performances are so fun and so compelling, and like I'm just not getting that. They're really good, but it's not near the heights. They're really good levels. And again, as we've discussed before, you can say like, well, it's just a few episodes in. It's like, that's true, but Matt Smith came in
right out of the gate.
And part of this, I keep saying this about Peter Capaldi, and I'm sorry, what's the actress? What's Clara?
Jenna Coleman.
But actually, I think it has more to do with, I don't think Stephen Moffat's like firing on all cylinders right now. And I think when he started in the Matt Smith era, and it was like, here's all the ideas I have for Doctor Who, and they're ready. It's like that first album of a band, where it's like, here's everything, and I just have such clear ideas.
I've been wanting to write the show since I was a child.
Right. And now it feels much more like, I'm trying, this is a new thing. I have a new kind of puzzle to solve. I'm trying to this, but it's not as effortless and just amazing as maybe it was at the beginning. So 65, the classic episode, The Crusade, I will just say, and we talked about this, I did enjoy listening to an audio, but I think this would probably be ranked higher if I actually saw the video. So I had it ranked higher than the NuWho, which is rare for me. I usually don't rank it higher, but I have it ranked 52. And I decided to put it as we mentioned, John and I were mentioning before the podcast, I end up putting it right next to other things that like, oh yeah, that seems similar. But I actually put it next to a bunch of NuWho episodes. I put it just above last week's Into the Dalek and just below the Cold War. I mean, it's really hard to rank something above like a submarine Cold War episode. Come on.
Yeah,
But
I
thought it was really good, and I think I would put it up there more with like the Aztecs and stuff like that, which I have 20, I think, if I could have seen it.
Yeah.
I think I would have liked it more. The plot wasn't great, but that's okay with me. I really just like the performances. Thought the performances were great, but yeah, probably would have hit harder had it been video.
Yeah, I get you. Well, we're kind of in agreement on these. So Robot of Sherwood, I actually have it number 60, so very close to where you do.
Very close.
I agree. I think it's a bit of it's not really advancing any storyline, right? It's a puff piece, right? It's sort of witty and funny. They go back in time. It's got this trying to have this underlying theme about myths and legends and the Doctor and stuff like that. I think you're right. I think again, Clara so she was the impossible girl. Now she's generic companion who is with the Doctor, but we don't she's a teacher now. I guess that's the thing, which we don't really get a ton.
She was a nanny.
She was a nanny. She's involved with children on some level and not in a creepy way.
By the way, she's threaded throughout all Doctors in all time and have saved the universe.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to. I don't really know that we can come up with a comparable social situation. Like I've never run into someone at a cocktail party who I know who's threaded through my entire history. I have to save my life any multiple times. So I don't know. Do you bring that up? Do you not bring that? I don't know what you do there. But so, like clearly, it's kind of like okay, reset on her character. She's a new character, but we don't really know that. Again, we don't know much about her or you know, she doesn't seem to have a ton of strong character traits. She's enjoyable. I like watching her.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I wonder if maybe at the time, watching it then, it was like refreshing to not have a character who had a whole bunch of complexes and was in love with the Doctor and was like, maybe she was just like, oh, she's just kind of having fun.
Well, but that reminds me more of like Donna.
Yeah.
Which I thought was more successful. I mean, totally different vibe, obviously, but and Donna had like a thrust to her character, and I just don't find this yet with Jenna Coleman. I think she's good. I really enjoy watching her. It's just that's why I feel like it's almost a writing thing. It's like I'm not sure she's being given something that's a real defined
we're about to get there. I think we'll start on a new run with her in the next episode. But yeah, so but a fun episode, funny. I love the banter between the Doctor and Robin Hood, and so that was a lot of fun. So yeah, number 60 for me. The Crusade. High up for me, because I do like I watched 2 episodes on videos. Obviously, I have 50% more video than you have because it's on the new DVD, by the way.
Maybe that would have helped.
Speaking of giving money back to the BBC, that was another Blu-ray that I bought and to replace the 8 DVDs that I'd already bought. So yes, this was I was able to see telesnaps but actually I'd listened to it on audio and the book is very good too. David Whitaker wrote the novelization. Strong performances, strong characters, just very rich. I like the Shakespearean sort of dialogue to it. That scene between Joanna and Richard is sort of exemplary of a lot of the stuff in there. So for me, it's at number 22. We got a little bit, it's up there. Because I have a soft spot for the historicals, and some of them don't always work. But this one, to me, this is close to the Aztecs, although. Not maybe it doesn't have quite as much as sort of that interesting complex dilemma. I mean, this is just an adventure. Like, just get Barbara back is basically the storyline. I mean, that is actually the whole storyline. Just get Barbara back somehow. And
you have it ranked
all this
for the new Doctor historicals. You have it ranked right under Vincent and the Doctor.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I think Vincent and the Doctor, again, really strong story, performances, characters, dialogue, but a little bit richer in the sense of like there's obviously some deeper theme going on than let's just get Vincent back, right? If he was missing, we're trying to get him back. Let's take a look at the Doctor Who magazine rankings here. How do we fare comparatively? For a Robot of Sherwood, not a popular one, number 29 of 35, which I don't know if that says as much about Robot of Sherwood as it does about the other stories. This is the first time they'd ever ranked the Peter Capaldi one, so it's not. We're not sure if it will go up or down or where it is, but that's where it comes out. So pretty much in the bottom quarter of them. So not one of the most beloved. Although again, I think nothing to actively dislike. I think just more of not particularly noteworthy. For What do we just? Oh, the Crusade. For the Crusade, it is number 13 of 29. So just sitting firmly in the middle. It has it's dropped a little bit. It used to be number 9 and 98, but has dropped a few spaces. But right around the Chase and the rest. Well, you haven't seen any of these yet. It's right around nothing that you've seen before.
Well,
no
more
reference.
more importantly, we should see how the Not the Mind Probe supercomputer combines our rankings.
Well, I was stalling to give it time to calculate.
Yes, we need some cycles.
Tape wheels spinning.
The server
behind you.
room is pretty hot. As you know, there's extreme heat in a lot of parts of the country right now. The server room for No Not the Mind Probe ranking is pretty up there. But the Crusade, checking in much closer to your ranking, it ends up at 28. So we're in the top 30.
Solid.
Right next to the Snowmen, right above Planet of the Daleks,
Mm-hmm.
and Robot of Sherwood, 54.
Okay.
Which right next to the Rings of Akatan, which I'm like, yeah, that's about right. Like that seems Rings of Akatan, School Reunion, the Three Doctors, the Time Warrior, Smith and Jones. That's pretty similar. I also wanted to point out that my feeling right now of where I've ranked the 12th Doctor currently fits within the composite rankings for the 9th, 10th, 11th Doctor, which is a little better than Christopher Eccleston, little worse than David Tennant, and not close to Matt Smith, who I have ranked as like my kind of top doc here at the moment.
Okay.
You currently have the 12th Doctor ranked number 1 with a bullet of all Doctors based on 3 episodes. So I just wanted to point that out to you.
Well, all right. I think you will. Well, Capaldi will grow on you.
You'll grow.
Capaldi
Yeah,
grows
I know
on
you
everybody.
will. Yeah.
And I think it does not come out of the gate quite as fast as Matt Smith, but comes in hot. Comes in hot at the end there.
Well, you can go to mindprobe.show and you can see these rankings. I just updated them.
Yeah.
And you can see our rankings. You can see John and mine's individually, as well as the combined rankings. You can link to all the episodes. And by the way, I don't know if you've noticed, I don't know if you've checked out mindprobe.show recently, but I've started tagging the Doctors and the companions and all the shows. So you can click on those and you can see all the Clara ones. It's not complete.
Okay.
Certainly not for the old. The Doctors part of it is complete, but the companions is not. Is
There's a lot of
very
companions
incomplete.
to get there. Yeah,
But yeah,
so
we'll start
many
to collect those. So if you want to, listen to the episodes of a particular companion or Doctor, you should be able to do that. You can
when people
email.
when they re-listen. So obviously people are going to go through. It's just like Doctor Who. People are going to go through this once, and then they're going to start re-listening out of order.
That's right.
And after you hear 4 or 5 times of Mind Probe,
I want to listen to all the 6th Doctor podcast in order. And how did Porter react to them in order, even though he didn't listen to them in order? And I think that'll be interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
What else? So you can email us, Porter at mindprobe.show, John at mindprobe.show. On the website, you can subscribe. Go to YouTube and subscribe. You can see videos, all these. Say hi, John.
Videos.
Hi, YouTube.
Hi, we're on the videos.
You can subscribe. We'd love to subscribe. Give us a like on YouTube. Give us a rating on iTunes. We'd love all that. We'd absolutely love it. But most importantly, just listen to the show and please do send it to friends you think would be interested. We'd love to have more people listening.
Yeah. We picked up another fan in like a few weeks ago. Like we're really skyrocketing at this point.
We're gonna break through a dozen in no time, and then the sky's the limit.
Well, plus we're only 10 episodes out from our 100, which means then we're in syndication. Which is
yeah, that's right.
Once you hit 100 eps, then we just sit back and let the residuals roll.
Where do you think they're going to slot us in? Do you think put us in instead of Inside Edition, like that kind of a?
I was hoping Lifetime. I hope we get like a Lifetime morning slot or something like that, because but you need to be like abused or something like some sort of or secretly your neighbor needs to be murdered and you aren't sure if their husband did it or not. But we can Lifetime. Call us. We can work it out. Whatever you need.
John, what do we have in store for next episode?
Next episode. All right. We are moving on in the Peter Capaldi, Jenna Coleman years here to a very different episode. This is Listen by Stephen Moffat, which is
wow, do you want to know a secret?
There we go.
It's basically just that Beatles song.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Beatles, so they're still relevant.
Still relevant.
Yes. So Listen, and so as I've said in the past, sometimes the connections on these stories are hard to figure out. And Listen, Listen is definitely one. There's been very few stories like it in the pantheon of Doctor Who. So the tenuous link is that you meet Danny Pink, the present day Danny Pink, and then you meet a future offspring of Danny Pink, Orson Pink, right, in a story. So I needed a story where that something like that happened. So I lit upon The Massacre, which pretty much is not like Listen at all. But it is The Massacre, or The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve, I think is the full title. It is a First Doctor and Stephen story. And at the very end, we meet Dodo Chaplet, who is apparently a very distant offspring of a character that we met earlier in The Massacre. So that is your link.
There's your link.
Yeah,
Come
so
on.
everybody happy? So, and yes, because otherwise, if you were pairing these stories, you're like, oh, I don't have a theme night. These two would be probably very jarring, I would say, listen to together. So The Massacre, and this is, as Porter has mentioned, this is all audio. Like, if you need pictures, you're out of luck. This one is audio, and it has 90 million characters, many of them who sound exactly the same. So good luck.
Well, that is exciting. We can't wait to listen to that next week.
I think,
By the way, you know, Mrs. Probe worked for Inside Edition years ago.
Oh, really? Did she get yelled at by Bill O'Reilly? Is she the one that he's yelling at that says, do it live?
She was there during the Deborah Norville years, which actually continued. By the way, that show's still going strong.
Because it's just like Doctor Who. Like, I remember the episode where Bill O'Reilly regenerated into Deborah Norville at the desk. It was
She
crazy.
said they would push really hard during story development to include one animal story always. So, like, if a deer like ran into a bar, that was like, we did it, people. All right, mindprobe.show.